Leadership is the ability to create change. Wherever you are, whatever role you're in right now, there's some opportunity for you to initiate change, to begin to lean into the process of leading something.
Justin.
Sam.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your time here.
Yeah.
I've paid attention to 2 or 3 of your services, but I remember you telling me there's some kind of like almost like a retreat setting that you go to before you're going to be a pastor, and they give you some test. It's like one of these 200 item test things, and then you get some feedback. And for most people, it's kind of a coronation where they go, "Hey, it's good.
Right,
Come here." And
right.
with you, when you took your test, it was sort of, hey,
not so much.
Hey, wait a minute. This your data is suggesting that you should be sort of a guy that takes over a company and fires a bunch of people and it turns profitability. Tell me about that sort of I guess general makeup from a very valid assessment and your ability. I guess at some juncture, leadership is about saying no or about separating yourself from, okay, here's what represented the past, and here's where we're going. My sense is that's really different, and I would suggest more challenging in a volunteer organization, than it might be in a corporate setting, where you come in and there's all sorts of, kind of.
Oh man, so much so. I mean, when I was in the process of becoming a pastor, one of the checks they put in there is essentially a psychological profile. And I met with this psychologist, and his first words were actually, "I've been doing this for 20 some years, and this is the worst pastoral profile I've ever seen." I was like, "So what's the good news?"
Good. Good. So there's
I actually had to beg to take the test again. It's just to try and mitigate some of the extremes. Now, 5-10 years later, I would kind of disagree with him about his own vision of what a CEO is all about. But he had said, you look like somebody who could fire 50 people in a day and go home and enjoy your meal with your family. And pastors, you can't imagine firing anybody. And I think that's a poor stereotype on both ends. Like, I think that CEOs, the really great ones, care deeply about their people and about their organization, and those two things go hand in hand, and that would not make decisions like that callously, especially people they've invested in. And also pastors, there's this sense that pastors are real sweet, caring people that you want kind of by your bedside, but couldn't organize their way out of a box or have no kind of ambition or drive to make change or to move things forward, but rather people who offer kind of lofty ideas and read poems and sing songs and stuff like that. And so I actually think that some of the greatest pastors are like great CEOs, that they care so much about their mission and their vision and the people who are supporting them that they will make the hard decisions when they have to for the sake of the mission, to let folks go, to kill a program, to fire a volunteer. And so unfortunately not many churches operate that way, but I feel pretty committed to kind of creating that sort of environment because I do believe in what we're doing. So in a volunteer situation, I think there's benefits and drawbacks. Some people say you can't fire a volunteer, and I'm like, sure you can. Like, we do it all the time. But it is a different sort of relationship. But some of the benefits there too are that the people who are serving you, there isn't a paycheck tied to it, that they are there because they want to be there. And when they don't want to be there, they won't be anymore. There's some benefits in that. And also just having that many volunteers in our organization, as we grow as an organization, not only kind of the laity and the people who attend our services, but also with that, our staff. I've got this incredible pool of volunteers that basically, whether they know it or not, I'm always interviewing. The hundreds of folks in our church, I'm just constantly scanning the room for the next great talent that I think most companies probably don't have access to. That I just have, a few hundred people in front of me every Sunday that I'm watching do all sorts of things and trying to discern who's the next one that I'm gonna, scoop up to come join us on our staff to help move our mission forward. So there are benefits and drawbacks, I think, in that, but more similar than not. And that makes some people uncomfortable, but I'm pretty comfortable with it.
The one thing that hits me about a CEO and a business, and they answer to a board that makes decisions, and then they have to implement. I mean, do you have a similar structure? So it's like.
Yep.
hey, we got to get donations up,
That's
or,
right.
Whatever the issues are or the challenges.
There are. Churches are organized differently. Some have kind of one board of elders. I've got like 5. So I've got a whole army of people, of boards and committees that essentially hold me accountable and can fire me at any time, and that I'm responsible to. And that's also a big part of this kind of moment for me in my own leadership. Is it's one thing to lead staff. It's one thing to be successful, say, with your consumer. It's another thing to have a great relationship with your board and to figure out how to lead them and inspire them and to create change there. There's certain change that's easy to create with my staff and even with our consumer that's hard to create with our elders or our board. And then there's things that are really easy to convince our board of but hard to convince our staff of, And so I find myself between all these worlds all the time, trying to figure out how to bring us all along. It's a whole new dynamic that I'm trying to figure out.
When you talk about like influencing or leading your staff, right? Would you align that more with they're your direct reports or they're your peers? Like how do you approach that set of circumstances?
So they are, I mean, there's definitely, one of the things I think I learned earlier, and I don't know if this is true for everybody, it was helpful for me. This is how I've had to learn to operate, but in the beginning when I was leading, I think I tried to really minimize power differences. And we were all just buddies and we were all colleagues and we were all the exact same and we're all family and friends all the time. And then occasionally there would be moments where like someone had to be in charge and I would remind them that I was in charge, and it seemed to create a lot of chaos, and strife. And I thought we were friends, but now apparently, whatever. Or whenever there was any need for challenge or accountability, it was really difficult to do it because I had created a relationship that wasn't transparent or fair in the way that it needed to be. And so now I think on one hand, they know that we're all in this together, that we're all replaceable, that we're all only here for a time. There's some things that are similar across all of our positions, regardless of where you are in the organization, but also that I am charged with leading this organization and that they'll largely be held accountable to me. And so there are some processes and protocol in place there that just make that transparent. And I think that's made our relationship a lot more peaceful and appropriate in many ways. And so in managing evaluations and compensation things and making those hard decisions are a lot easier to have those conversations when those things are open and transparent. And strangely, I've found that it even incentivizes people. So my closest direct report, essentially our COO, we call her our Director of Operations, just a couple of weeks ago was saying to somebody in our community that kind of got back to me, but she had just said, I'm actually really motivated by the fact that I know that if I don't do my job, Justin would fire me. And it inspires me to show up and to be better every day. And so some of that stuff is like, I've learned to get leverage out of that rather than to create an environment that was just really cozy and comfortable for everybody and there was no real leader, but we're all just a team. But at the same time, I have to continue to create space to make sure that I'm hearing their voices and that they do have opportunities to challenge and to redirect our organization. One of the things that I'm pretty poor at that I need to get better at is, and I'm also learning in leadership. In the beginning, when it was all about vision and it wasn't about relationships, it was fine for me to be the one who was talking all the time. And now, as it's more about relationships, I find that I just have to listen more. And that's the challenge with our staff. I think that's how I create that sense of relationship or connection, is that I ask great questions, that I spend time giving them the floor and listening. I heard a leader recently say that if you as a leader stop listening, soon you'll be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. And I could see that coming, and so there's clearly like authoritative structures there, but also if I'm doing my job right, I'm listening more than I'm speaking. And so that, I think, is the kind of environment we're trying to create. Yeah.
It seems like you're mission driven.
Yeah.
And that's the source of accountability.
Yeah.
It's not about personal preference.
No.
It's about like what we're trying to do, and more on that in a minute or two. But in the context of that, what are you looking for as you're identifying your high potentials What are you looking for in leaders? Like when you're scanning people that come to your services that you have access to, like what sort of traits, characteristics, talents to you define leaders that can help you with your mission?
I'm looking for things that I think a lot of people are looking for, like influence. Do they have a crowd? Do people follow them? When they speak, do folks listen? When they show up, do people show up around them, you know? I also think one of the things I'm looking for is passion. I've just realized they've got to have some energy, internal kind of engine that drives them. Are they passionate about what we're doing, about what they're doing? Curiosity is huge to me. When somebody gets curious about what we're doing, or even about their own life, or asks lots of questions, or is always reading, or engages on that level, I feel like we're probably on the trail of a leader there. And also, once again, one of the things, the kind of humble realizations of leadership too that I've come to is that leadership really starts by leading yourself. And so am I changing? How am I changing? How am I growing and evolving? And am I open to change? And so I think the leaders in our community that I'm looking for not only have influence and are curious and passionate, but they're also people that I see they're working on themselves. They're changing, they're evolving, they're growing. They're not the same people they were 2 years ago. They're teachable, humble, in those sorts of ways. And so when I start to see that kind of constellation, I know that we've got somebody that we want to pay attention to and create a pathway for if they're halfway interested in joining kind of what we're up to. So I think those are the things I'll look for. And then once we've identified those people, we kick the tires on it really through delegation. Like we'll give a task that is pretty menial and see what happens with it, and then something with a little larger responsibility and a little less direction, and then something with a lot of responsibility and almost no direction. And you kind of like earn your way into that. And that was something I learned too in the beginning. I think I used to delegate people who had high capacity. I would delegate tasks with all the details and just burn them out and lose them. And then other folks, I would just say, you know what, I'm bad at delegation, so I'm just gonna go do this, like the whole thing, and I'm sure you got it. And they didn't have it, and so that's been kind of this test of kind of just saying, let's just start here, and we'll give somebody something small, even if in my mind I know I got this huge project I want them to do before I jump there. Let's just see culturally, does this work? Are they a fit? Will they achieve? And can we give them some small things and see what they make of it, and then release the big project? So that's a big, like 30,000 foot view of the principle, I think, philosophy of how we develop leaders on our staff and even volunteers is that sort of process.
Because I think, we're going to do other interviews with other people in a variety of different walks of life that are in one way, shape, or form leaders. We will not do a better interview than this one.
Come on, no.
So on behalf of everybody at the Center for Leadership Studies, Justin, sincere thanks.
Thank you, Sam.
Really appreciate it.
Man. Absolutely.
Take care, go lead.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.